Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone here to the funeral services for Murray Odel. Before we begin today's services for him, I'd like to give everybody the opportunity to silence their phones or their electronic devices. Officiating today's service will be Rabbi Wendy Spears.
So I didn't see everyone check their phones. Please pull out your phone, make sure it's on silent or off. The one that's going to start ringing is the one you're absolutely sure is turned off right now. So I'm checking mine. It says red there. As I'm sure you know, Murray was a huge movie buff, having worked at the Berman family's movie theaters for many, many years. He saw all the movies that were screened. This particular song that we'll sing this afternoon in tribute to him was well known when it was first written in 1931, but it became even more famous because it was featured in the film Casablanca from 1942. So if you know the words and would like to sing with me, please feel comfortable to do so. You must remember this, a kiss is still a kiss, a sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when two lovers woo, they still say I love you. On that you can rely. No matter what the future brings as time goes by. Moonlight and love songs are never out of date. Hearts full of passion, jealousy and hate. Woman needs man, and man must have his mate, that no one can deny. It's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory, a case for do or die. The world will always welcome lovers as time goes by. Very nice tribute to Murray. Thank you for joining with me. So we're here this afternoon to share prayers and memories as we bid farewell to Murray Odel. We recall the blessing of his life. All the things that were good and true in his life are the precious memories which shall endure. We gain comfort by being with one another, by looking into each other's faces, by hearing each other's voices as we recite ancient words of comfort. The most well-known of the Psalms of comfort is Psalm 23, which you'll find in the brown booklets at the top of page 14. The booklets open from right to left, Hebrew opening. And we're going to read the English together at the top of the page. That first word that you see there, Adonai, is one of the names for God in Jewish culture, and that's the name we're going to use in this psalm together. So please join together reading with me aloud. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. We are gifted not only with psalms of comfort, but with words of great wisdom. And the first of the wisdom literature is Ecclesiastes in the Bible. And in chapter 3, he writes, "For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pull up what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. The word eulogy means good speech. Jewish culture teaches that when the souls of our loved ones make the transition from this world to the next world, it becomes our mitzvah, a Jewish way of doing and being, to tell their life story in such a way that it becomes a good story worth telling over and over again and worth listening to time and again. Because we as a people, the Jewish people, we're all about our stories. This has been our inheritance from the generations who've come before us and the legacy that we leave to the generations that follow us. We're all about our stories, stories that we've told around campfires in the wilderness, in great cities, in the fields, and over time, we've wandered from country to country through our world, and we've finally come to this place, and we still tell those stories, the stories that tell us about our history and our wanderings and who we are and what our hopes might be for the future. We weave our personal stories into the stories of our people to affirm that our storytelling tradition still lives and is valuable and is inside of us. And when the words come out, they become part of the great story of the Jewish people. So it is my very great privilege this afternoon to begin to share Murray's story with you. These are some of the memories that his family shared with me on Friday. And all of you who know Murray have a part of his story inside of you. And so I encourage you at the meal of comfort later today, and as the days and weeks pass from this moment, that you make it a point to pick up the phone or go visit with Murray's family and let them know your part of his story. And so this is just the beginning. Surrounded by siblings most of his life, Murray Odel knew how to connect in relationship with other people. He knew how to step back and give others the space to be themselves and share that gift with him. He valued hospitality, offering snacks to guests visiting him at home, picking up the check in restaurants with his oft-repeated phrase, "Boy, you guys sure can eat." Born in the Whitechapel district of East London in England, 1908, Murray was the second of Saul and Fanny Odel's 5 children. The family wasn't particularly well-to-do. And even as a very young child, Murray was working as an errand boy out of his father's barber shop. Sometimes this included running bets for the bookies and keeping the thirsty working girls supplied with ale. He dropped out of school after the 8th grade to help support the family and found work in a glove factory. But he never stopped educating himself, even when his formal education ended. He was an avid reader all of his life. He became expert at working crossword puzzles, and he became a talented writer, keeping detailed travel diaries with which he painted pictures of all the places that he had been with his words. Murray learned early on the value of being thrifty. He saved and collected all kinds of things: stamps, baseball cards, coins, records, newspaper articles, and anything else that might be of use. He couldn't pass up a bargain, and the 99-cent store was one of his favorite places to be. He also collected vocabulary words with which contributed to the enjoyment of his working the crossword. He kept sports statistics that helped him win various football pools and fantasy baseball. And he collected friends practically everywhere he went. His thrift and sharp eye for collecting contributed to his success in life. He never used a credit card and didn't have any major debt. He saved from his paycheck and was able to buy his first home in cash. His dream of having a nice home and providing for his family came true. For such a practical guy, love at first sight probably took Murray by surprise. He was working at the time in the Los Angeles garment district as a pattern cutter, having come from New York after immigrating to America when he was 18 years old. His good friend and co-worker, Harry Block, invited him to come along on a visit to Harry's girlfriend, Sylvia Berman. When Murray met Sylvia's sister, Jenny, he knew he would marry her. From their wedding day in 1934, 2 years after they met, Murray and Jenny enjoyed over 70 years of joy and adventure until her death in 2005. From the beginning, Murray fit in really well with Jen's siblings and became their good friend. He used to joke that although Jen was the love of his life, he really could have married any of her sisters. When Jen and her siblings met for lunch every 6 weeks, Murray easily joined them. They shared a duplex with Jenny's sister Clara and her husband Danny for 11 years with a fair amount of harmony. Jenny's family, as I mentioned before, owned a chain of movie theaters in East Los Angeles, and Murray came into the family business as the purchasing agent for the concessions and supplies. He came to adore movies and saw everything that screened in the theaters. He was also a whiz at promotions, acquiring classic comments to raffle off, huge posters, and a giant rubber Pepsi bottle to display in the lobby. He worked long hours, so when he got home, he enjoyed being with Jenny to eat a simple dinner, watch television, work the crossword puzzle. Well-suited traveling companions, the two of them crisscrossed the world later in life and made friends in every tour group. Sylvia, Jen's sister, often accompanied them since her husband, Harry, that same Harry Block, didn't like to travel. Early to bed and early to rise, Murray was consistently ready to go and do. He appreciated art and sought out museums wherever he went and collected art books. One little known fact about Murray is that he never drove a car. He walked almost everywhere and occasionally took the bus. He credited his longevity to his long walks. People would often ask him the secret of his long life, and he would say he didn't smoke, he didn't drink, and then he would jokingly tack on that he didn't have sex until he was 12. He did feel that being in happy relationships contributed to his long life, and he was proud of his long marriage with his beloved Jean. Though he was a modest man, and he wouldn't have said that he was proud at all, Murray cherished his loving relationships with family and friends, was happy to have achieved material success, and was pleased to be able to write well through his own efforts. Everyone liked Murray, and he was an enjoyable member of any group. A raconteur, he consistently had a witty story to relate or a funny anecdote to share. Dapper and meticulous about his appearance, he particularly enjoyed a close shave. Always well-groomed, he appreciated the success that afforded him this type of luxury. He luxuriated also in his large family and encouraged them by saying, "Go help yourself to happiness." By his own example, Murray taught them the value of hard work and taking care of each other. His children, Larry, Franklin, and Ed, along with their spouses and partners, Gail, Sandy, and Julie, are already carrying on Murray's legacy, nurturing relationships amongst themselves. Murray, of course, a great storyteller in his own right, enjoyed hearing stories about his grandchildren, Scott, Jason, Leah, and Aaron. His great-grandchildren, Goldie, Shaoli, Chani, Sruli, Shoshana, Shandi, Hannah, Chaya, Nechama, Esti, Gitti, and Yoni. Hope you're writing this down. There's a test later. And his great-grandchildren, Forrest, Joey, and Ricky. At this time, I'd like to invite Larry Odel, Murray's oldest son, to come forward and share some memories with all of us.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was wonderful remembrances of Murray. I want to thank you all for coming today to honor our father, Murray Odel. As you can tell by the video that was played earlier, this is not going to be your typical memorial service. Murray loved Frank's video so much, the 100-year video, that we wanted to share it with you. That being said, DVDs will be sold in the lobby for $8.95 or 2 for $16 after the service. I'm just kidding. Frank's calculating now what he can do for those. Murray was a simple guy. He loved and was devoted to his beautiful Jenny and his 3 sons for almost 81 years. In these past difficult years, I always tried to remember the good things. I had him to myself pretty much for the first 10 years, which was great. He took me to the Brooklyn Theater and let me go behind the candy counter where I could eat candy and popcorn all day. And when we moved west, he would take me on the bus downtown to Clifton's Cafeteria, the $1 Million Theater, the Original Pantry, and Felipe's. After my bar mitzvah, he and I flew to New York, where I met my grandparents and uncles Bob and Joey for the first time. We went to a Yankees game during that trip, and I saw Phil Rizzuto steal home for the Yankees. I never forgot that. We also saw a Broadway show, so we had a great time. Murray loved to go out to dinner with the family. We would go to Maria's on La Brea and Pico, King's Tropical Inn, where Frank decided to sneak out of a window in the restroom when he was about 10 years old. Carolina Pines, Hillside Guy near our house, Farmer's Market, and Andre's across the street from Farmer's Market. When I was older, there were movie premieres, trips, and cruises. In 1980, I rediscovered baseball cards, and Murray and I went to a baseball card show in the Valley, and we were hooked. In 1980, we began buying cases of cards from Topps, Fleers, and Donruss, and he would open a box of 12,000 cards and proceed to sort out the cards that were all in random order and put them in numbered sets from 1 to 720. There were cards in the bedroom, all over the table, and all over the house pretty much. In later years, he was walking to the market and back into his early 90s. He was walking on his own in the condo in the late 90s and into his early hundreds. Unfortunately, these last 3 years were difficult. Here, he was confined to his bed for most of the day, but when I came over, he would always greet me, even though he was tired, weak, confused, and not very happy. When I left, he'd always thank me for coming. There's lots of people I have to thank. First of all, my brothers who stepped up and were always there for him without complaint, even though their lives were altered unimaginably for some 10 years between my mother and father's illnesses. They've made me very proud. My beautiful wife, Gail, spent hundreds and hundreds of hours caring for Jenny and Murray in hospitals, nursing homes, and in their home. And if she wasn't holding their hands and talking to them, she was cutting Murray's hair, preparing chili, meatloaf, meatballs, and baked apples, Murray's favorite. Sandy was always there comforting Murray, preparing healthy meals and desserts, bringing him his favorite fruits, and bringing him pies and cakes that she and her friends made for him. Scott would fly in from Denver to see him, and Jason was there on all special occasions and for regular visits. He got to see his great-grandson Forrest just 2 weeks ago, and he was thrilled and happy to see him. Aunt Clara would visit, cook and bake for him. Ann would make her chocolate chip cookies and cakes, and with Mickey would visit regularly. Pearl and Linda would drive in often from Orange County with food and goodies. Leonard and Darlene would drive in from San Luis Obispo to visit, and Cousin Marty would bring over his vat of famous cabbage soup that Murray and I loved. Maureen knew him for almost 50 years, and she was always checking in to see how he was doing. And all of his nieces and nephews, my cousins, second cousins, they would call and visit all the time. There wasn't a day went by that one of them wouldn't do that. I need to mention something I didn't write down, but I walked in today and saw this beautiful flower arrangement, and this is just an example of how people loved and took to Murray. The name on there is Joe and Kathy Casella. Joe is ill and couldn't be here today. But like 30 years ago, Joe and I worked for a company called Equifax, and Joe started a football pool. So of course I told Murray about it, and he wanted in right away. So we were in every week under the name LJO. You pick 15 games, the pros or college, as many games as you want, 15 games, but any ones you wanted. And whoever did best won first prize, second prize, third prize. Well, Murray would get his gold sheet on Monday and the newspapers and the stats. He'd spend 4 days piling over all this information until Thursday when Joe would call him and he'd give him his picks finally. Well, Joe told me, he says, Murray, because I called him after I saw this arrangement, he said, Murray and I had a bond. He said, he would make my week when I called him on Thursday. He just wouldn't give me his picks. We'd end up talking for 30, 40 minutes. And he said, I just loved him like a father. And he said, I meant to put something on the card that came with the flowers, but it didn't get in right. He said, all I wanted to say was, rest in peace, good friend. So that's just an example of how people took to my father. And I can't thank enough his beautiful caregivers, Rose and Maria. They were always cheerful, caring, and positive. They watched over him like mother hens and would always come running whenever he called, which was often during the day and night. They were the ones who did all the difficult things that none of us could ever do, and we'll be forever grateful to them. Murray left us peacefully with all those who loved him at his side. What more could he ask? Thank you.
And now we're going to hear from Ed, Murray's youngest son. No, Franklin.
Full house. TOG OTC Supply Company, Katy, Texas. Dear sirs, we've been buying first quality, new fit adult briefs for 2.5 years, ever since my father had a major surgery to install a stent in a blocked artery from the small intestine. I would like to inquire about the return of 3 unopened cases of diapers. Murray was 103 at the time of the surgery. He celebrated his 104th birthday at the Lake Balboa Recovery Center, surrounded by nurses and well-wishers. My dad endured incredible pain and discomfort during months of rehabilitation and made heroic and exhausting efforts doing physical therapy and exercises. At the time of his diagnosis, we had to make a baffling decision about whether to let such an elderly person have the surgery, and had questions about how we would handle him, take care of him afterwards. Fortunately, it was the right decision. If we had done nothing, Murray would have spent his last days dying from a painful condition and probably knocked out on morphine. Instead, we found wonderful help, especially our caregivers, Rose and Marie, who cared for Murray and supported our family right through to the end. When Murray passed away peacefully at home, his own home, surrounded by family, and only moments after we watched final episodes of his favorite shows, Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. It's an email from Rose. I am Rose. I was Murray's caregiver for almost 4 years. When the lady at the agency told me that I was going to assign a male patient who was over 100 years old, I was quite reluctant to go. I thought it was a job that would probably last for just a few months. My first impression of the old man, he was vivacious, funny, and bright. I cannot recall the number of cream cheese and jelly on sourdough that I have served him. He ate it almost every day. I was beginning to believe it was the sandwich of youth. I learned of Murray's travels and adventures when he asked me to transcribe his journals. For some time, I wondered why he was poring over those penny saver ads. He was looking for a typewriter so I could type the journals. He could not understand that I was typing on the iPad. Murray had a daughter who loved him so much. She's from the Philippines. Her name is Rose. To a great Papa, rest in peace, and may eternal light shine upon you. This is from my life in London, Murray, one of Murray's journals. In that, Murray describes his family life in Whitechapel, London, and the 30 houses on Grove Street that were filled with Jewish immigrants from Vilna, Russia. He mentions outdoor plumbing, buying the daily food from local merchants, the weather, bed bugs, kids on the street, prostitutes in the alley, going to the family bath once a week, girls, and his first day at school, his famous first day at school. He summarizes, this blew me away when I read this. He said, when I look back at my childhood and all the people living on Grove Street, we were all doomed. How could you make something yourself if you had to leave school when you reached the age of 14? All I got out of schooling was, if I could recite the alphabet, count to 100, and spell, I would graduate summa cum laude. My father had his own barbershop and wanted me to work with him, but I hated the barbershop. So I went out and got a job in a pocketbook factory. My sister Ann at 17 was working in a mail order stamp shop. Lily worked in the factory 10 hours a day, sewing trimmings on ladies' hats. Everything we earned, we brought home and gave to our mother. So Murray came to America, fell in love, raised a family, put his kids through school, saved some money, lived long, and was always Murray until the final day of his life. It's from Murray's journal. Today is Sunday, September 18, 2005. It is the day of Jean, my loving wife's funeral. I did not sleep well the previous night. I tossed around in my bed thinking of all sorts of crazy things. I woke at 5:30 and hobbled to the bathroom. I washed my face with a hot towel and lathered my face and started to give myself a shave. All right, that's followed by a detailed stroke-by-stroke description of the shave. Getting dressed, his suit, where he bought that suit, Sam Goldberg, World War II, how to tie a tie, and the drive to Hillside, and who went in which car, and who drove. So to continue, we left for the mortuary. The time was 11:15, and the funeral was set for 1 p.m. We had to make sure that everything went on time because they had another funeral set for 2. We assembled in the back and asked to see Jean. They opened the coffin, and there was Jean lying there, her hair combed, her face smoothed out, her hands folded over. She looked lovely, and that's how we said goodbye. It's getting close, and the show must start at 1 o'clock. All the people were seated. The curtain was drawn. There laid the coffin, a beautiful bouquet of red and pink roses in a basket laying at the foot, a basket of beautiful assorted flowers on the left, another on the right. Music was playing softly, and the rabbi walked out to the podium. So next comes Murray's critique of the rabbi, the service, and everybody's speech. And then he concludes, the people left the chapel to go to the burial ground. The family first, then came the coffin with the pallbearers. Family was seated, the coffin was lowered in the hole. The rabbi said a prayer, and the family and guests repeated the Kaddish. The rabbi tossed the first shovelful of dirt. Larry took me over to the grave and helped me to throw dirt into the hole over the coffin. Then Aaron and Jason started tossing dirt, each from his side. We left for Nancy's house, where the tables were set with all kinds of food, fruit salads, cakes, cookies, and drinks. The people came and ate their fill. I'd like to thank my brothers, Sandy and Gail, Rose and Marie, my Aunt Clara, and Rubens everywhere, to Ann Berman and all my cousins, all my family and friends, the residents at Lindley Terrace, all the healthcare people who attended Murray for the last 10 years, Rabbi Wendy Spears, thank you, and to all the people that are attending today, thank you, and I quote Rose, to great Papa, rest in peace, and may eternal light shine upon you. Thank you.
Okay, and now we'll have Ed.
My father had an amazing run of 106 years and 324 days by my calculations. I could be off. After my mother passed away in 2005, my father remained active and lucid by checking the daily stock market reports, updating and managing his portfolios, and organizing his coin and stamp collections. He could spend several hours a day and show no sign of fatigue sorting massive sets of Larry's baseball cards, either numerically or by player. In his weekly college football pools, he had a passion for handicapping, charting and comparing every team's past performances, and to the amazement of those participating in his competition. He could design his own version of a spreadsheet using just one lead pencil and had no reason to ever consider using an adding machine. Being a voracious reader, he was determined to collect every book written by Michael Connolly and David Baldacci, which lined the walls on several bookshelves in his den. Whenever his caregivers checked his blood pressure, it was frequently lower than mine, which drove me crazy. He did slow down a little after having and surviving major surgery in 2011 at the amazing age of 103. He was truly invincible and a miracle of modern science. Over the last few years, it was becoming increasingly difficult for him to get around and do all the things he enjoyed. Larry went beyond the call of duty to keep everything in order and never complained. Just a few of his many tasks included doing all the financing, paying bills, check writing, shopping, and arranging doctor visits. On many occasions, Franklin would stay overnights and part of the next day to be there for him when he woke up. My brothers and I took 3-day shifts during the evenings to have dinner with him and watch his two favorite shows, Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. It was sometimes difficult to adjust the scheduling, but we managed to succeed most of the time, trying to make sure at least one of us was there every evening. This past week has been extremely difficult for the entire family. When we each got a call from his caregiver, Maria, on December 1st, we all made a point of dropping what we were doing and getting over to his condo as soon as possible. I'm so thankful that my brothers, Gail, Sandy, Jason, and Clara, and cousins Jerry and Howard were all there with us when my father passed away peacefully around 8:30 that evening. A special thank you to my father's caregivers, Maria and former caregiver, Rose. Marie worshiped and thought of them both as his daughters. In closing, I'd especially like to thank all our friends and family here who have turned out today to pay their respects and help celebrate the life of my father. Rest in peace and say hi to Mom for me, Dad. Love you. Thank you.
Although we have come to the conclusion of sharing memories here in this chapel, it's not the end of sharing memories. All of you are invited to share in the meal of comfort with Murray's family. It is appropriate at that time to share memories together all throughout this week and as the weeks and months pass from this moment. We're taught that we, as a community, are the keepers of the flame. We light candles when we remember our loved ones, when we gather together as community. But it is our storytelling that keeps that flame burning brightly. The candle reminds us to share our words, to share our memories, and make a good story. People become famous because others tell their story. It is now your mitzvah to tell Murray's story and make him famous. You'll see that his family are wearing black ribbons. These are called kriya, the Hebrew word for tearing, symbolizing that Murray has been torn away from their family as he has died and begins his journey to the next world. Those ribbons also serve as a reminder to all of you to fulfill your mitzvah, a Jewish way of doing and being, to care for Murray's family during this time of intense mourning, whether that is preparing a meal or doing some errands or straightening up the house, helping to pack up, so that you are reflecting the love in your heart into the work of your hands. Folks, we have one more prayer to share together here in this chapel, the prayer of comfort, which you'll find on pages 18 and 19 of the brown booklets. Again, the booklets open from right to left, Hebrew opening. This is a standing prayer, so I ask you now to please rise. I'm going to sing in the Hebrew. We'll all read together in the English. El malei rachamim shochen bamromim hamsei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina im kedoshim utehorim kezohar harakia masirim et nishmat Moshe ben Shaul shalach leolamo Bala rachamim yastireu beseter kenafav leolamim veitzror bitzror hachaim et nishmato Adonai hu nachalato v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar. We say together, Amen. Now go to the top of page 19. The horizontal line, the second line of that paragraph, is for Murray's full name. So we join together reading aloud, please. O compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant complete rest in your sheltering presence to Murray Odel, who has entered eternity. Master of motherly love, sheltered by your divine wings, may he be bound up in the bond of eternal life. The eternal God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. Amen. Please be seated. Mr. Dykes is going to come forward and give us some final instructions as we make our way to the interment site. Please take the brown booklets with you, as we will be using them at the site.
Thank you, Rabbi. And I'd like to thank everyone for being here today for Murray's funeral services. This concludes the service in the chapel for Murray. As we exit the chapel, we'll be processing to his gravesite. The gravesite is within walking distance, and the funeral assistant will take everyone by foot to the gravesite if you'd like. For those who would like to travel in their vehicles, you're certainly welcome to. You'll just be following the funeral hearse as we make our way to his final resting place. As the rabbi had mentioned, at his gravesite, the Kaddish will be prayed. It can be found on pages 31 and 32 of your brown prayer booklets, and of course we encourage you to take those as you leave the chapel. As you depart Hillside this afternoon, you're welcome to the memorial gathering in honor of Murray. It will be held at Howard and Marilyn Rubin's home. There are directions just outside on the marble lectern to your left if you would like to take one of those. The following have the distinct honor of being casket bearers today for Murray. As I call your name, you can come right up to his casket. Franklin Odel, Scott Odel, Jason Argabright, Aaron Odel, Michael Berman, and Ken Goodfried. The following are honorary casket bearers today. Honorary casket bearers can walk with the family as we exit the chapel. They are Leonard Marks, Marty Caden, Howard Rubin, and Gary Jubas. I'd like to welcome everyone to please stand.